right now the French ambassador to South Africa. Aurélien Lechevallier is briefing the media on plans to repatriate over 200 French citizens from South Africa. Let's listen in.
Just a few maybe updates. We wanted to touch base with you because the dialogue, including at presidential level, that time has been quite active between South Africa and France, especially on the response to the COVID-19 crisis. If I take it by the chronological order, maybe it's the simplest way to introduce the discussions. So you may know that a little bit more than 10 days ago, there was an extraordinary summit of the G20. Actually, it was by VTC. And I think it was the 27th of March, or the 26th of March, sorry, which was also the last day before the lockdown in South Africa. But that day, during the afternoon, there was a VTC summit between the G20 heads of state and government. And it was about the G20 response to the coronavirus situation. And obviously, President Ramaphosa and President Macron attended. And there was a very strong call from President Macron and from President Ramaphosa for a special, let's say, a special initiative for Africa, a multilateral response for Africa. And the communique of this G20 meeting was more general. It was quite ambitious in terms of the policies that the G20 countries and international organizations should implement. But there was no real focus on Africa. But at least during the exchanges between the leaders, it was really put forward by the South African president as chair of the AU, of course, also, and sole member of Sub-Saharan Africa at the G20, and the French president. So after this G20 extraordinary VTC summit, we continued very closely to discuss between Pretoria and Paris. There were different exchanges between the teams, back and forth. And we decided to set up a call between the two presidents. So this call took place last Wednesday. It was the 1st of April. A very fruitful conversation between our two presidents. Of course, they briefed each other regarding the situation in South Africa and in France, the different measures and policies that are being taken. But they also focused on this idea of a strong action plan for Africa, if I may say, and a strong multilateral response to the crisis. And they decided to draft a kind of a plan that would be introduced to the other African leaders. So that prepared another meeting that took place last Friday. It was an Africa Union board meeting, chaired by President Ramaphosa, of course. And it was also a special meeting because it was an enlarged format. So the regular board members of the African Union Bureau board, but also special guests, including the presidents of Rwanda, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the President of Senegal, the President of Zimbabwe, and the Director General of WHO, the World Health Organization. And the French president was also invited to join this AU extraordinary board meeting. So I think it was quite exceptional. Maybe you have other examples in your mind, but I'm not aware of similar cases or opportunities when a French president or a non-African head of state was invited to join such a meeting. And the idea behind this invitation was for President Macron to briefly introduce to the African leaders these ideas, this action plan that President Ramaphosa and President Macron had been talking about. And so it happened exactly like this. President Macron introduced the main priorities of the plan. It was then discussed by the different participants, and President Ramaphosa concluded made the final remarks and concluded the board meeting. And this contribution was officially welcomed by the African Union through a communique. Maybe Yana sent you this final communique. I don't know if you received it already, but mentioning the fact that that the French president participated and also engaged with the African leaders regarding the strategy for Africa. So obviously, on the substance now, it's an African-led strategy. But President Macron felt that it was important to contribute because what we have in mind is really to provoke a strong multilateral response to the crisis. Not only bilateral contributions, not only African contributions, of course, or national contributions, but also an international endeavor, an international effort to tackle the crisis in Africa in strong cooperation with Europe and with the international organizations. So if we go a little bit deeper in the substance, there are four pillars behind this plan that was introduced by the South African and the French presidents. The first pillar is about health response capacity. So trying to promote more available resources for health systems, African health systems, and that covers also the global health funds, such as Gavi or the Global Fund, which will allocate parts of their programs to the immediate response to the COVID-19 crisis. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is a massive economic stimulus package. So you probably heard of that already. It covers with the World Bank, IMF, and different regional development banks and international financial institutions, possible loans with concessional guarantees to make sure that the African countries would receive available fundings during this critical period of time. And it includes also the idea of an immediate waiver on the interest payments for the ongoing international loans or debts towards the multilateral actors. The third pillar is more on the humanitarian front. So a humanitarian response plan with food and logistical supplies to the most affected communities. And on that front, the UN of course, is leading, especially with the World Food Programme, the WFP.
All right, so we're going to leave that there for the time being. That was France's ambassador to South Africa, Aurélien Lechevallier, giving media a virtual briefing on plans to repatriate French nationals in South Africa back home. He began by outlining conversations that have been taking place between South Africa and the G20 leaders, with the French president as well, and also leaders across the continent. Of course, the president of South Africa, the AU chair at the moment. The plans put on the table on how to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, a plan, a strategy with input from President Emmanuel Macron, apparently was welcomed by the AU. And France wants to introduce a strong multilateral response to assist Africa, and looking towards things like assistance that could be in the terms of stimulus packages, interest-free loans, or low-interest payments to help stimulate the continent's economy. We're hoping to chat to the French ambassador a little bit later on, just to get another update on some of the initiatives that have been put on the table with the assistance of France. That was France's ambassador, Aurélien Lechevallier, speaking.